Hello and welcome to Morgan in Bookland. I am so excited. Today I'm going to do a review of my first finished book of 2024, which is Gold by Raven Kennedy. I don't have the hard copy, so I have the lovely Kindle version. This is the fifth book in the Plated Prisoner series, and I am so excited to dive in. How I'm going to structure this is I'll kind of do like a plot overview, both of Gold and like the series in general. So if you haven't read the series, because again, this is book 5, and it was actually supposed to be the last book, but surprise, there's another one. If you haven't read the series, then this will be spoilery because of the fact that it starts off 5 books in. So there won't be any spoilers for Gold specifically in the beginning. I will have a spoiler section towards the end, but I'll kind of go through plot, my feelings, general rating, and then I'll end with some spoilers and thoughts on those things there. So if you haven't started the series, this is going to go right into spoilers for the full series, so don't do that. But if you are excited to start Gold, this will be spoiler free up until the end, and I will definitely make it super clear. But anyway, let's dive in. Okay, so I really, really enjoyed this book. I have had mixed feelings about the Plated Prisoner series in general, I would say. Like, book 1 starts with like an orgy, and I'm like, oh, this is interesting, because normally I'm not the kind of person who's driven by the spicy scenes. I don't mind it when they're in there, but I like it when they're in there with purpose. And they are in this series, and I was like, oh, we are really starting off strong here. But as the books have gone on, I've really enjoyed them more, and this was definitely my favorite book of the series so far, which is great. And I remember I was actually like 80% through this book and panicking because Raven Kennedy, the author, was like, this is going to be my last book. And at 80%, I'm like, what, like the last 20% is just going to be a bulleted list of just like top level plot points just to finish it up, because there's no way she can wrap everything up. And then I found out after I finished that she is going to do a 6th book. And I'm like, okay, that makes way more sense and makes me a lot happier for so many reasons, but I'll kind of get into that. I do want to start with general plot. Look, last time I had paper in my last video. Now I've got a notebook. We are leveling up. One day I'll get to like iPad with the fancy iPad pencil and notes, but today we are settling with very fancy notepad. So how this book picks up right after book 4. I think book 4 was Gleam. I always get the names confused. I think it's Guild, Glint, Gleam, Glow. So Glow, I think, was book 4. I don't know, I could be wrong. Either way, book of 4 picks up right off of there. So where we were is at the end of book 4, our main character, Arin, she is on like a trial, like falsely accused of all this stuff. Essentially falsely accused of stealing magic, because no one believes that, she had the gold touch and it wasn't Midas, it was always her. And Slade kind of comes to the rescue, and while he can't really fully save her, he is able to. He's so angry and like so empowered at that moment. He's able to like really dive deep into his power, and he creates another rip, which sends her into Anwin, the fairy realm. And if you remember from previous books, he created a rip when he again was in a super emotional state with how his father was treating his mother and his brother, I think half brother technically, and him, and that strong emotional thing is kind of what allows him to really create this world realm shattering power and cross between realms. So he saved her by sending her to Anwin, but then the rip closes. And I think at the end of Gold, that's not a spoiler, because that's kind of how it worked too. Like, it's a thing. Like, it opens and then it's done. So they are in separate places. So you have Arwen, who lands in Anwin, which is the Fey realm, and she learns quite quickly that it's beautiful, it's amazing, but she also learns that just like the human realm, there is a lot of corruption, a lot of issues with the government. There's like secret rebellions going on, and she happens to land in an area where she happens to land in an area where, like, can't remember if that's where she was born technically. It's not where she was born technically, but like it has some sort of connection to her, which then made me think like, oh, does the Rip like know this? I don't know. But anyway, she lands, at least while it's turmoil, she lands in a friendly place for her, which is nice. And so she makes some allies right away, kind of gets like the lay of the land. And then her goal through this book is trying to get to Slade. So, and like she knows he's in the human realm. And so she is just trying to get back to him and do whatever she can, but she's like powerless in that, right? And so she keeps going back to like where the Rip was, and of course it's gone, and he never came through or followed her. So she just kind of naturally, organically ends up kind of on like a quest type of situation. It is a traveling thing, so if you don't like the traveling trope, she's like traveling a lot through this book. Actually Slade is too, for different reasons. So if you don't like the traveling trope, I would say it's not that bad, because like it's not like just lots of pages of like through the wilderness and stuff. Like you definitely get that, but there are significant pauses with significant events. So it's not like full on the whole book is one long road trip type of situation. So that's where we are with Arin. She lands in Anwen. It's political turmoil over there. Luckily, she lands in a place where, you know, she's considered like an ally. So she meets some friends, gets the lay of the land, and is just trying to do whatever she can do to get back to Slade. So then let's go back to the human realm. In this book, we have Slade. He is like trying to get complete and total revenge for everything that happened, and is kind of like on a tyrant across the different kingdoms. Remember, he's the head of, I think it's, oh gosh, I don't know. I think it's Second Kingdom. Things I should know off the top of my head. Maybe it's Fifth Kingdom. No. Anyway, whatever kingdom he's in charge of, he's not there, because he's just like going rampant all over the place. Because if you remember from book 4, I think it's called the Conflux, if I remember correctly, something with a C. And it might not be a C. Either way, where Arin was on trial, how that works in the human realm is all the heads of the different kingdoms, all 7, then 6 kingdoms, had to be present. So all of the heads of the kingdoms he sees as responsible for what happened to Arin, and so he's just like going on a rampage, while also at the same time trying to dive deep into his power to create another Rip to get to Anwen. And no matter what he does, he just can't. Like he's also like, he spends a good amount of the book just like clearly not eating or sleeping and like fighting and doing physical activity. So he's at his wit's end, like physically, so he can't get back to her. And it's kind of like he's his own worst enemy, right? Like maybe if he would just get a good night's sleep and a bowl of soup or something, maybe he'd have the energy to do it. But that's where we are with him. And then the 2 other plots that really come into play in this book are Osric and Risa. So if we remember, Risa was stabbed like in the heart. Like, I was actually shocked that they kept her alive, like, because it was just the way it was written. I was like, oh, she's dead. And it's like, oh, she's not dead. But either way, she's technically still alive in a comatose state. And Osric, who, if you remember, he's like part of the Wrath, I think they're called, but essentially like Slade's inner circle. He like spends all his time at Risa's bed, just like hoping she'll get better. He calls her Yellow Bell. And he kind of like, his journey through this book is, because if he's going through that, he's like, you see a little bit more of a softer side, and he definitely has more to his character arc in this book, which is enjoyable. And then lastly, the other plot that's really crucial to this book is Queen Melina. So if you remember where we left off in Glow, she let the Fae in without meaning to. So she, in Glow, Midas, she is not aware that Midas is dead, right? And so in Glow, she's like retaking over her kingdom. And this might have happened in book 3 in Gleam a little bit too. I know, I think it's mostly Glow, actually. Either way, in the past books, Melina is like trying to retake her kingdom, try to remove all the gaudy gold stuff from everything, bring back the blues and the frost type of feel to the decor, trying to be one with her people, and they just don't like her. They don't care for her. They've always liked Midas, and then like Midas has been spreading rumors about her. If you remember from previous books, Midas got one of his saddles, because that's like that's the term the ladies are called, the lady consorts. One of his saddles missed pregnant and told Melina, she like, we're gonna hide Mist and you're gonna claim the baby as yours since you can't give me a baby of your own. And Melina was like, yeah, no, I'm not gonna do it. And then because she made that path, Midas was like, okay, cool, I'm gonna have you assassinated, and then I'm gonna go be with another queen. Queen Kayla, who is kind of a big deal in this book. She appears quite a bit, and in case you don't remember, she was a very big schemer in Glow in trying to get rid of Arin, and then like pretending like she's now also pretending she's pregnant with Midas's baby to claim his kingdom. Lots of stuff going on there, but I won't delve in too much because I don't want to give spoilers at this point anyway. Spoilers later. So we have Melina, who then like her poor she's mean, like she's nasty. She is like, if you watch Game of Thrones, she's like Cersei Lannister. Like you just hate her, and like you try. Like there are some times where in Game of Thrones, it's kind of written, or the TV show makes you want, you can tell they're trying to get you to like the character and or feel for them, and you just don't. That's kind of how I felt about Melina leading up to this book. So essentially what then happened at the end of Glow, she's like, nope, I'm not gonna pretend that's my baby. I don't need that. I am strong on my own, not doing that. So then Midas tries to assassinate her and then proposes to Queen Kayla, who will be the new queen of Melina. It's actually Melina's kingdom. If we remember, Melina was kind of forced by her family to marry Titus because there's this rule, only those with magic can be royals in the kingdoms. And like if you don't have magic, you like there needs to be someone with magic leading the kingdom, and she doesn't have any magic, which is like unheard of, and Midas they thought did, so she was kind of forced to marry him to bring magic into the castle, and so that way her kingdom, I think it's Sixth Kingdom, has someone ruling with magic. So she kind of had like a crazy sad kind of not upbringing but situation there, but she's just awful in the books. So going all the way back now, he tries to get her to he sends an assassin after her. She like escapes, but her personal guards are murdered, her consort is murdered, and the assassin's like on her trail. But then this gentleman who she knew previously like kind of leads her to Seventh Kingdom and was like, you can get your power there. There's this thing there that you can do. And so he and another fae kind of bring her to Seventh Kingdom and convince her, if you give us your blood and recite this, you'll be granted powers. And because, she's never had powers, and it really caused a lot of just pain and suffering in her life. That's like what she wants. She's like, maybe if I have power, my people will love me and I can reclaim my kingdom. And of course, at the end of Glow, it kind of backfires, and she reopens this bridge that's been closed between Anwin and Anwin, the fairy realm, and then the human realm, and the fae come in, and then she's like, so where she starts off in this book in Gold, she's like imprisoned by the fae, and it was like all of her. She does actually get power, which is super cool, but she's just like their prisoner. So that was a lot of stuff, but I feel like because this is a book review of book 5 in a series, I did feel like some of that like refresher stuff is helpful. So again, if you haven't read Gold yet and you're going into it, everything I just talked about are kind of the key points that you would need to remember going into Gold. So top level recap of Gold is Arin's and Anwin. She lands with allies, but there's a lot of turmoil. She kind of naturally lands herself as part of like this group of people, and she's traveling through, and honestly her only goal is to get back to Slade. And then you have Slade in the human realm who is trying to get to Arryn, well, to Anwin, to be with Arryn, and his power's just drained, and he's kind of going on a rampage, holding all of those responsible who are at the conflicts, trying to get rid and kill Arryn. And then you have Melina, who's imprisoned by the Fae and brought them in to the human realm, and now she has power. And then last but not least, you have Osric, who's kind of turning sweet because Risa was stabbed in the heart on her deathbed, and he just will not leave her side. So that's the book. Obviously not the whole book, but that's kind of like the general plot, where it's going. Obviously there's a lot more that happens than that. But yeah, before I get to the spoiler part, I do kind of want to share my general thoughts. So I mentioned at the beginning of this video, I have a lot of mixed thoughts about the series in general. And I actually, transparently, I find this series really frustrating to read because of the fact that I think the pacing is just so off. Like, this book was a perfect example. This book has like 10, I didn't count them, but like at least like 10 major plot points, like big things that happen, like important things that happen. Were like book one, like two. Book two, like 2 things that happen. Like, so the pacing is off, right? And the amount of content and plot and development we get is kind of off. Like, it takes the first 3 books to like really fully learn about the human realm, and to really learn about who Arryn really is, and to really learn about Slade, and to get all that political stuff out of the way. And then book 4 like picks it up like crazy, and book 5, this book moved, and like you are just thrown into a whole new realm, this Fae realm, and like you learn everything top to bottom. And I'm like, it took us 3 darn books to learn everything that was going on before, and now all of a sudden within like 5 chapters, like we got everything. So I'm frustrated with the series because I just think the pacing is just off. Like, I feel like books 1 through 4 should have been 3 books, or they could have been 4 books, but you got to push some of the plot down. Like, give some of those first 3 books just a little bit more stuff. You can revisit histories more and fully build out the world more in those first 3 books, I would say. I really enjoyed 4, which is why I was excited to read 5. 4 was like my last straw. Like, we'll see. I'm either going to love this or hate it, and I liked it. And then I get to book 5. So the thing that I'm frustrated is, like, I absolutely love this book. My first reaction was like, oh my gosh, it's totally 5 stars. I'm giving it 4.5 out of 5 because I just don't feel like it's quite there at 5. But the reasons why I loved it so much is it is multiple point of view, and I do like multiple point of view books, but there are times when you read multiple point of view and you're like, ugh, I gotta read this person's point of view now. And I thought the balance between the different points of view was really well done. Every time it switched to a new point of view, I was excited. I was like, oh good, we're getting back to this. And like, I never felt like, ugh, I gotta go back to this character now, because, and in the beginning, like the first chapter, we see Queen Melina, I'm like, oh man, but like it sets it up and you're like, ooh, this is exciting. So that was done really well. And also the balance of how many characters get point of view chapters. Like, you get a lot from Arryn, you get a good amount from Slade, and you get a lot from Melina, which I think if you go into this book, you'll realize is something you really do want. And you get a couple from Osric, right? And like Osric, you know, he doesn't need many, so he doesn't get many, so it gives you enough. So I just feel like the balance between who's talking when and where we are in the world was really, really well done. I do think one of the things that's kind of jarring is, I mentioned like the pacing feels off between the other books, and also just in general, like this was a really spicy series that then it's not like, this is like barely a chili pepper. Like, there's like next to no spice, and not even like I'm talking about like in book 1, it opens with an orgy. The main character, she's like watching, she's forced to watch, but she's not involved. So like, there's like lots of references to like, you know, because they're saddles. So there's lots of references to like spicy type things, and there's like nothing in this book. And I loved it. I wasn't like, oh good, it's gone. But you know, the plot is enough, and it's so important. There's so many other things going on. But considering the other books were so sexual and a lot of times and super spicy, it was kind of weird for this one to just not be. But I still loved it and it was great. But if you're someone who like read these books for the spice and it's a driving factor, no, this book is a completely different vibe. And I don't want you to be taken aback by the fact that it's like next to nothing. And I feel like the one scene that was put in there was kind of put in there to give it something to kind of keep it somewhat in line with the rest. But yeah, so again, it just felt like a different book in a way because it's very different from the others. Other things I love, like I loved Melina's story. I was worried I wouldn't like hers, and hers was one of my favorites, and I couldn't wait to get back to it. And Slade is like totally in his villain era in this book. Like he is just going batshit crazy, and it's really fun to watch. The other thing that I really enjoyed is Arin is now like independent. If you think about where she is in the first three books, she's tied to Midas, she's literally caged, and then she's with Slade and like really dependent on him, and then now she's alone, and she has to make her alone in a new world, and like she's just been recently starting to get control of her powers, and so it's really fun seeing her grow into her own and kind of be her own person and kind of grow out of that more timid, I would say, like I really really enjoyed kind of how she was written and her story and how she kind of just deals with everything going on. So that is all that I have for non-spoiler. So it is spoiler time. So if you haven't read Gold, stop this video right here. Make sure to subscribe and follow, comment, DM me when you finish it so we can chat, especially about the ending. But we are entering Spoilerville in 3, 2, 1, spoilers. All right, so the things I didn't like about this book are actually the spoiler things. And it's that there were no surprises, people. Like, if you've read this book, this, like, Arin being royalty, long lost royalty, and like the true queen of the Fae, like clearly we saw it coming that she was going to be an important thing. And I'm just like, okay, like I like that it was done really well, don't get me wrong, but this book was set up in a way to like not be surprising, I would say. Like I think it was very clear that when she gets there, it's clearly something's up with her. People are going to recognize her. She is someone of importance, and shockingly, she is. And I didn't mind it. The new characters that they introduced to kind of take her on her journey through Anwin, like the rebellion and save humans and, try to make a difference, and for her to really show that she is someone who can fight and not just a figurehead. And when she kind of decides that she really does kind of want to be a part of that cause and not just like the face of it. Gosh, I just lost my train of thought there. What was it? Oh yeah, the characters and all that. Like, I really enjoyed them. I thought they were a good addition. But the thing that was frustrating is like we're on book 5 of 6 and you're bringing in all these new characters that I now am emotionally tied to and caring about. And like it was like plot overload and detail overload and character relationship overload. And I loved it. But it made I was like, man, the next books, like the first 4 books could have been so much better with some of that stuff. And I really enjoyed the end. Like I can't remember the main guy's name, of course, off the top of my head. And then he was bleeding and it's gold. And so like that was a shock. Like I was like, okay, I am so excited to see like how he's related to her, what this means. I did enjoy that. The things I didn't like, the mate thing, like we know they're like, we know their mates, Slade and Arin. Like that's not a surprise. I did really like Queen Kalia as the villain. I hated her so much. I thought it was such a good shot. Like it gave Melina an out to no longer be a villain, because I really enjoyed Melina. I enjoyed learning more about like her motives and backstory and kind of like this redemption. I feel like she's actually a very real character in terms of like, yeah, I made a lot of mistakes. I was a shitty person and I'm trying to atone, and I made mistakes because I felt so crappy and bad, and it was just the way I was able to emotionally deal with things. So I really liked her character, and by making Queen Kalia way more of the villain, which we definitely got in Glow, it really allowed Melina to shine as like having a redemption arc. And I thought Raven, the author, did a fabulous job making Melina a more believable character in terms of making her a likable character. And I really enjoyed her and the assassin. I thought once he was like showing up in a room at the castle at the very beginning, I was like, okay, this is going to be her love interest. Like that was kind of clear, but the banter between them and just the rawness that they were talking about between who they are as people, and like how she was vulnerable around him, it really brought a lot of like real feelings and emotions out. I really, really enjoyed that dynamic, and I really enjoyed reading it. So I did like that. But the thing that I hate, one of my all-time least favorite tropes, is the frickin' amnesia trope. And of course, this book ends with Aaron forgetting. And I'm like, I hate it. And I'll tell you why I hate it. I hate it because then the next book, you gotta catch her up. Like, luckily, thank goodness, this is a multiple point of view series. I'm holding this like it's the book, and it's not. It's my notes. Nothing super special. But it's like, you then have to like backtrack. And it's so frustrating because then that person has to relearn their memories, and then it kind of makes it boring and it's hard to go forward. And there's so much that needs to happen in this final last book. And the fact that in addition to Slade getting back to Aaron, the Fae in the human realm being dealt with, Melina, I'm assuming she's going to rise fully back to power, Queen Kayla getting dealt with, Riza and Osric getting it on, I'm sure that's going to be one heck of a spicy scene. And I'm here for that because that's been a huge payoff. I just think that's going to be fun. Clearly that's coming, right? And then everything going on in Anwin with the rebellion, with Slade's father, with Slade's mother, with these other cast of characters who somehow related to Aaron. Like, there is so much that needs to be dealt with to fill a book. Adding an amnesia plot on top of it where you have to remind the main character. And I just feel like the amnesia trope halts plot. Like, I recently read that in A Curse for True Love, book 3 of the Once Upon a Broken Heart series, and I knew in book 2 when it was hinting at that, like, at the amnesia trope, I knew that I would hate it, and guess what? I did. Because it was so boring, because it was a character who has a point of view, and it's just like, ugh. Like, just remember already. There was another series that I read where it was a 9-book series, but it was like 4 separate stories. And the second story, the first book was great, and then there was an amnesia thing, so the second book was just getting that character remember, and then you get to the book 3, and I'm like, it's such a cop-out to me, and it's such a waste of time, and I think there's so many better things to do, and especially in this book, this book right here, this is it, especially in this book, with how far Aaron's come to then take that memory from her, I feel like that's really counterproductive to the full character arc that we're going for. So I don't know. We'll see how it goes. I'm obviously going to read it because I love this book so much. And I think, like I said, I think the redeeming thing about the amnesia trope is that this is a multiple point of view book. So if I don't like the chapters about amnesia, at least it can be moved forward. Like the plot, everything can be moved forward through the other characters' points of view chapters. But and the thing is, I think it's a cop-out because authors want to be effective and like a huge cliffhanger. And what's more painful than someone getting to the very end only and realize he's my mate and then forget? Like, obviously, it makes a big impact in that book. So I get it. And it's exciting in that way, but it doesn't make me excited for that in the next book because I'm like, here we go. Just a waste of time. So that was Gold by Raven Kennedy. And I know I ended on a note of frustration there, but I do think this was the best book in the series. And I have a feeling, even though the next book has to deal with the amnesia trope, like I said, multiple points of view, I think it'll still be good. I'm really excited. I feel more excited in this series. Like, I was being done with it. And so I'm so glad I picked up Gold and read it because I do think that she's going to have a really good ending in terms of just feeling fulfilled that all the plots are tied up and also really well done and not rushed. I'm glad that she decided to do a 6th book that as of now is slated to come out in August of this year, 2024. So I will be patiently awaiting to read about how Aaron gets her memories back, as well as how everything else wraps up. But that is it. That is all she read. If you have comments, please comment. Please message me on the Instagram. I am at Morgan in Bookland. I would love to chat about books because I can only talk about this to my husband so much before it's clear that he is just not retaining any information or having interest. And I do feel bad trying to talk to him about all my fae who have wings or who are made of gold all kinds of things. So anyway, I hope you have a great rest of your evening, and thanks for tuning in.